We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Are you looking for healthier, fuller hair? Do you want extra money for bills, trips, extracurricular activities for your kids, or do you want to replace your entire income? Monat is the answer. Our products are Leaping Bunny certified, vegan, and Monat can be used by anyone, including your kids and pets. Message me on my Instagram to partner with me. Founder shares are available, and as a market partner, you have access to uncapped bonuses, 45% commission, 35 to 55% off discounts, on top of all-inclusive paid trips. Right now, I also have a free gift for anyone that partners with me, so don't miss out. You can message me on my Instagram at LizChilvers87.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you,
good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters. It is Mitch's worst 11, and this is going to be interesting because we're similar age groups, Mitch. So some of these players I know for a fact I've seen as well, and it's proved to be a divisive series. Some people like it, some people don't, but it's one which I think needed to be done after our best 11, and it's a good chance to do a little filler when we can't do a live show. And you've got, as everybody else has, 1 to 11. You've got 3 subs and you've got a manager. So we will start with your goalkeeper, who is somebody who is featured already in 1 or 2 teams. No surprise to say it is Lionel Perez.
And what a weird signing that was. He was Sunderland's number 1. And then all of a sudden they were very happy to let him go on a free, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And Kenny Dalglish brought him in, so he went from Sunderland's number 1 to number 3, and he made no impact. I was bouncing something.
Played no games, Mitch. He played. No. He was here for 2 years.
2, yeah. And I was speaking to somebody whose dad worked at the club at the time, and apparently the only conversation he had with him ended with the lad saying he had a boyfriend in heaven. So God knows what that was all about. It just seemed remarkable for its weirdness signing. And yeah, I mean, I'm confused by the amount of goalkeepers we've got on the go at the minute, but this was just a total left field. And to be honest with you, I never rated him when he was at Sunderland, and I didn't see what the point of bringing him in was. Strange signing. As I say, never played a competitive game. And you've got to wonder at that time, was it a favour to winning agent?
Possibly, yeah.
Something like that. It's the only thing I could see, there being any kind of connection there. I just really couldn't work it out.
Yeah, strange one, mate. No surprise to see him in your team. Goalkeepers, we've seemed to have been blessed with good ones over the years, but he certainly was a strange fish. Okay, we've gone for, by the looks of it, in your team. Have you gone 3 at the back here?
I have. I've gone with the back 3. Simply you'll see when I put my midfield together why I've gone with the back 3.
So one of those players is this man, Paul Sweeney.
And like a couple of other players I've got in this, it's not just for the player themselves; it's what they represent to me. And he was one of a series of left fullbacks who were just awful. Didn't perform. They were almost identikit in their shiteness. Really, he was one of a series of players that we brought in from Scotland on the cheap, in the hope that would hit lucky with somebody who would click. You couldn't argue against the lad's wholeheartedness. And as one of a series of left fullbacks that got stick off the paddocks, left, right, and centre over a 10-year period, that's kind of what he represents. I seem to remember one game in particular against Millwall, was it? When he basically got led a merry dance by the wing, to the point where I think it took the groundsman 2 hours to get him out of the ground after the game. You know, he was screwed right in. He just never worked, never clicked, never looked right. But that was kind of all part of the problem with the club at that time. The lack of ambition and the desire to do everything on the cheap and hope that would sign somebody from Scotland that might just click and what have you. But he also, for me, represents a position that's long been a scapegoat in terms of Newcastle United for me, and growing up, was the left backs always seem to get stick, no matter who it was. Because why they seem to get guys like Paul Sweeney who were wholehearted but weren't good enough, or we had John Bailey and Kenny Sampson, people who were England internationals but were totally at the end of their career, ruined physically, riddled with alcohol, and generally unable to play.
Yeah, it's a strange one. Paul Sweeney actually inducted into the Hall of Fame at Wraith Rovers, where he made 204 appearances and scored 8 goals. 6 great years with Rovers. Came to Newcastle, 36 appearances and no goals. I got on quite well with Paul when he moved to Gateshead, and he still lives in the area. Last seen at South Shields in 1998, 1999.
Really?
Yeah. He did the rounds. He went to St Johnstone from Newcastle. Then he went to Gateshead. And
he liked the yellow card, if I remember right.
He was like a version of a Scottish version of John Anderson. Just not as good as Ando at kicking people up in the air, I don't think. But yeah, you're right. You know, he didn't grace himself really at St James's, but you know, look, he's like we say about all of these players. You know, they came down, they gave their best. I'm sure they didn't come here with the intention of not being able to do it. It takes a special player to make it at St James's Park. And yeah, well worth a position, I guess, in your team. So you got 3 at the back. I'm guessing the stalwart of this team because of his career at Arsenal and Spurs and of course England, I guess has to be this man, Sol Campbell.
Yeah. And not only was he so abjectly bad when he arrived, unfit, overweight, had an inflated ego. Seem to remember him driving around the Northumberland countryside proclaiming he was Lord something or other at one point. His legs had gone and his head had gone by the time he put a black and white shirt on. I seem to remember him being the centre of an appalling back 5. Was it down at Stoke when we had our horses handed to her? He didn't last long, thankfully, but the damage was already done. I've never seen a player fall from grace so far. Yeah, I've just mentioned John Bailey and Kenny Sansom as 2 who come to Newcastle at the end of their careers and really weren't the players that they were. But it was quite unexpected. Everybody in the football world seemed to say, oh, he's got 1 or 2 more years left in him. And that it was an astute signing for Newcastle, and he was what we needed to shore up a back 4 that was much maligned and long maligned. And he delivered nothing.
No, definitely didn't. He did break a record when he was with Newcastle. Do you know what it was, Mitch?
Good Lord. I don't even know if I want to think about it.
When he came on for his...
substituted off?
No, when he came on for his debut for Newcastle, he came on as a 38-minute substitute for Fabrizio Coloccini. And that was in a 2-1 defeat at Manchester City at the Manchester Stadium. And in doing that, he became only the second player after Ryan Giggs to play in the first 19 seasons of the Premier League. So there you go. He broke a record. He did actually captain Newcastle as well. He captained Newcastle when he made his first Premier League start against Chelsea. And he was given the captain's armband after Shola Amiobi was substituted. That tells you where we were at as a team in those days, with Shola having the captain's armband. But yeah, pitiful, really. Like so many of these ex-legends, if you like, just coming to Newcastle on the gravy train, at the wrong end of his career. And 2011, Alan Pardew put him out of his misery.
What struck me about him was his head had gone. He had this inflated self-ego and sense of self-worth that carried on for a few years after, when he was questioning why he wasn't getting managerial jobs and coaching jobs. Well, it's because he's shit, mate. That's why. There's no conspiracy theory. It's because he's shit. And you don't understand how to connect with modern footballers. You're stuck in the past. You're the end of a relic. And you're awful. And you're an awful person. You never come across as a likeable person. Very, very, very weird. Again, another weird transfer, and another one where we got mugged off by somebody at the end of their career getting a last contract.
Yeah, we've had a few of them over the years. Making up your back three. Oh, there's a right blast from the past. It's John Cornwell.
Yes, the blonde bomber. Curious signing. He was signed as a winger. Then I think it was Jack Charlton tried to convert him to a holding midfielder. And then he ended up playing most of his games at right fullback. And I can tell you now, he was none of any of them. I don't know what he was, other than a body on the pitch. And another one who, to give him his dues, he tried hard, but he just looked lost. And I think that's because he'd gone through 3 managers in a very short period of time, all of whom had different concepts about what they thought he would be. And so he ended up being none of the above. And formed pretty much one of the worst fullback pairings I think we've ever had at the club. And because I think he had little direction and had his role altered so many times, he just genuinely did look lost.
Yeah, he did. I mean, again, somebody who came with a good track record from Leyton Orient, lower level, of course, 203 appearances, 35 goals in his 1982 to 1987 stint.
Well, that's the key, you see. He played most of his games for us at right fullback, yet he come with 30-odd goals and 200 appearances because he was playing as a winger.
Yeah. Only at Newcastle a year, 33 games, 1 goal. Struggle to find out who that was against. I'd probably have to go back through my programme collection. Left us, went to Swindon, of course, who were, in that infamous season where we missed out on promotion by losing the playoff game to Sunderland. Sunderland then went on to beat Swindon at Wembley, and then Swindon went up. So bizarrely, John Cornwell in 1988-90 ended up as part of a promotion team with 25 appearances. He then went to Southend, 101 appearances there, 5 goals. But then his career after 1993 petered out, whether that was down to injuries. Cardiff, Brentford, Northampton he ended up at, and he only played 22 games in that last year between those 3 teams on loan before he disappeared. Still alive, 59 years of age, and still kicking around somewhere. But very little information on whatever happened to John
Cornwell. But he makes up Mitch's back three. So we're going into the midfield now. And again, you can tell by the Panini football stickers that we've got a few from the past here. By the way, I love finding these Panini football stickers. So without picking anybody in positions here, you've got your midfielders. Let's go for this lad, Gary Megson.
Oh, Gary Megson. You know, if ever a player came with a reputation and you think, oh, hey, we've got a good one here. This lad came from Forest. I forget, who was he? I think he was maybe Sheffield Wednesday before that.
Yeah, Sheffield Wednesday had 123 appearances, 13 goals. Bizarrely went to Forest in 84, never made an appearance.
Well, there's a story.
Do
you know the story?
No.
Right. Have you ever heard the phrase, you couldn't trap a bag of cement?
Yes.
Do you know who invented that?
It's got to be Cloughie.
Yes. Who did he invent it about?
Gary Megson.
Gary Megson. Yes. That phrase was Cloughie's comment about Gary Megson. Apparently, he signed him from Sheffield Wednesday, watched him in training twice, and decided, not for me.
Love it.
Not for me. He was signed on reputation and on the nod of Peter Taylor, apparently.
Wow.
And Cloughie saw him twice in training and thought, no. And apparently the phrase, he couldn't trap a bag of cement, was Cloughie's phrase, and it was about him. And who signed him? Us fuckwits.
Jack Charlton, probably, by the looks of it, 84, 85. But he could play the game.
And he came with this reputation and he had a swagger. Sadly, that swagger was another one of these cases. Well, he was the best player in his own ego. But we never saw it on the pitch, really. We never saw him bust the blood vessel for the black and white cause. He always looked aloof. When heads went down, he disappeared. And was never really somebody you'd want to be alongside in the trenches with. But that's Gary Megson, and that's how we ended up with him. We got stiffed by Cloughie, who signed him and never played him once. Because Cloughie's opinion on him was he couldn't trap a bag of cement. Brilliant.
Amazing spell at Sheff Wednesday. I mean, I mentioned he was there before he came to us, and then he went back to Sheffield Wednesday for another 4 years, had another 110 appearances and scored another 12 goals. Went on to Man City, was there for a few years, 82 appearances, Norwich, 46, and of course finished his career at Lincoln and Shrewsbury, but then went on to have a managerial career, which again, you know, not probably the greatest of times as a manager, but still managed to go to Norwich, Blackpool, Stockport, Stoke, West Brom, Forest. I bet you Cloughie would have loved that. Leicester, Bolton Wanderers, Sheffield Wednesday, and West Brom again as a caretaker. But
and he was linked with us many times as a manager.
He was, yeah.
Well. You know, and I never got it. Because I just remember seeing a player who could, you know, do a long diagonal pass and pick the winger out. He could shimmy on the edge of the area and have a shot. But by God, he wasn't a player you wanted around run the chips with him.
No, definitely not. Okay, Gary Megson is your first name in the midfield. Quickly followed by another Panini sticker player, Glenn Hodges.
He came, he saw, and he went. 7 games or something like that, I think.
Yes.
And another one who came, reputation attached to the Crazy Gang. You know, he was said to be the playmaker in the Crazy Gang at the time. And we're thinking, great, we've got somebody who comfortable at the top flight, he can play a ball, knows what he's doing. I think we struggled to get him out of Ladbrokes, allegedly. But another one who 7 games and he was gone. I think. It could be less.
7 games and no goals.
You know, and not just that, no goals, no assists, no effort, no interest, no nothing. It beggars belief how many players we had through at that time, like Hodges and like Megson. And is it any wonder we're sort of stagnated and didn't go anywhere? Because every time we thought, well, we've clicked here, it turned out we bought a pig in a poke, or we bought someone who just didn't have a clue, or didn't want a clue, didn't want to know. And I think that was his problem. I don't know if he even ever really wanted to come to Newcastle.
Strange.
I know there was some sort of story, but I don't know it about the signing of him. And it just, the only thing I can think of was he was a player who just didn't want to be in the northeast of England.
Strange situation that went on to play for Watford, Palace, Sheffield United, 147 appearances, 19 goals there, sorry. But yeah, strange signing that, never understood it. And I think you probably hit the nail on the head when you say he probably didn't want to be here. Next one is this guy. Boy, he looks quick.
Yeah, well, he was. He had all the pace of Olympic sprinter Alan Wells, and he had all the ball control of Olympic sprinter Alan Wells. And that was the problem. He was quick, but what he could actually do with it. But another one who came with a reputation was a QPR come from, and he'd scored goals and he'd made goals. And I think he lasted, 2 seasons with us? And I think 1 goal or 1 assist. I don't even think he got a goal.
You're right.
Just I tell you who you should spend 5 minutes with talking about Wayne Faraday, if you can keep him from exploding, is Biffa. I've never seen anybody go off on a player like Biffa does about Wayne Faraday if you get him started. And I totally understand why. The rumour was to put the gates on the side of the ground to keep him in, because otherwise he'd be halfway down Northumberland Street every game. You know, he was quick. But another one who came as a winger, I'm sure he played a handful of games at right back, because nobody seemed to know what to do with him. And that seems to be what we did at the time with players. Don't know what to do with him. Eventually you stick him at fullback, and then he gets all the stick off the paddocks, and then he's gone. And he just was... What I will give him was he did seem like he tried a bit. But that's, you know, when somebody's that pacey, they're always going to look like they're trying a bit. Because he was quick. I'll give him that. At the time, he was one of the quickest players, I think, in the division. But certainly you saw nothing of what he did at QPR in a black and white shirt.
And never really recovered from his spell at Newcastle either.
It just disappeared, I think.
Yeah, strange situation that. Okay, the next guy, struggled to get a picture of him, but did manage to find a cartoon of him. Frans Koenen, Mitch.
Frans Koenen, the Dutch wonder kid. One of the first signings I remember getting super excited for, because he came from Dutch football with this reputation as a goal scorer midfielder. I think he had a goal in every 3rd game, and he made a lot of goals, and he had some silky skills. Turned up at St James's Park, and he just looked like a fish out of water. I remember the buzz around the Gallagher then. Oh, got this young Dutch kid. He's fantastic. He's supposed to be brilliant. The Chronicle bigged him up. You know, this kid's going to be it. And at the time, of course, Dutch football was the pinnacle of football, so everybody wanted a Dutch wonder kid. Well, we got a Dutch wonder kid with 2 left feet, because he just looked lost. He looked like a lost little boy. Maybe he's too big a club, wrong move at the wrong time. He just petered out. I think he started the first 5 or 6 games, and then I think he was gone by just after Christmas. And it's the first time I remember feeling disappointed with a signing. I've had years of training after that. Like, I should have taken it as a sign that this was going to be me want for the next 30 years, you know. But yeah, I remember the first signing I genuinely felt excited for. There was a buzz around. Like my dad would tell you, you know, there was this genuine buzz around. This kid would pick up from Holland, and he was the next, you know, Dutch wonder kid. He'd be great. he was awful. He was just awful. Bullied off the ball very easily. I don't think anybody can remember him winning a tackle.
Terrible player by the looks of it, and not one that I saw. And probably not much footage of him either, I would imagine.
No, but yeah, interestingly though, when I put the team together, I did a little Google on him, and he's had quite a decent managerial career.
Yeah.
Which, you know, just goes to show the best players don't always make the best managers, and vice versa.
Okay. Next player. If I said Jose Rodriguez, Alves, and Túnez, what would you say to me, Mitch?
Fumaca. Oh my good Lord. You know, the more I look into this kid, there's recently been a movie about it, in a book, about a Brazilian lad who never was a footballer, but eked out a career being transferred and perennially injured to get signing on fees to support his family. And the more I think about it, I genuinely wonder if this kid was doing the same thing. If you look at the teams he went to, he managed to get moves here, there, and everywhere. I believe some people describe his period when he was with us, because he was with a number of different clubs, including Crystal Palace, as his quote-unquote European tour. You think of everybody in Brazil who can play football, and we picked the only lad off the Copacabana beach who, like Gary Megson, couldn't trap a bloody bag of cement. I do genuinely wonder how we're being done a little bit like bloody George Weah's cousin. You know what I mean? Because I don't even know what anybody saw in him to give him a go, let alone the people who did give him a chance.
Interesting player. Certainly had a career, believe it or not. When you listen to Mitch's reviews, started at Benfica, played no games. Birmingham City, played no games. Colchester United, played 1 game. Barnsley, played no games. Crystal Palace, 3 games. Newcastle, 5 games. He did well. FK Denovus, 10 games.
Well.
Then Turkeyspor, Berlin, 15 games and 2 goals. And then SC Paderborn, question mark it says. FB Wilhelmshaven, never even heard of that, but it sounds dodgy. 2007 he was there, 10 games, 1 goal, and then finished his illustrious career back in Berlin, 7 games, no goals. Wow, what a career, Mitch.
Yeah, but like I say, if you watch the documentary on it, I forget the lad's name. He's a Brazilian who basically pretended to be a professional footballer, and he'd go into training and then pick up a hamstring injury, and he then wouldn't play. Then magically a move would appear, and he'd go somewhere else and do the same thing. It just makes me wonder if he was on the same kind of slant, because I've never seen anybody look so out of place on a football field.
Okay, we've done your midfield. We're now up to your wonderful centre forwards, mate.
Yes. What a pairing.
Take your pick. Who are you going to go with first?
Frank Bingle. Go in the order I give them there. He was the yang to the yin that was Benny Christensen. Came together, signed at the same time, 2 Danish internationals. Benny Christensen oozed class, looked like a real player, glided across the football pitch. He looked like he was wearing a pair of stilts every game. He was as mobile as the Titanic, turning away from a bloody iceberg. And even when he managed to get his goal against Liverpool, I think it hit the back of his head. I don't think he knew much about it. Just absolutely plainly awful. And he couldn't have been any different to his countrymen who signed at the same time.
Okay, Benny Christensen was one of those players who was like, he ran with a forward slant. I think I've mentioned it on one of the other shows, so somebody picked him. But yeah, Frank Pingle. I mean, I think it was the goal. Was it the game against? It was the game against Liverpool. Yeah, I think it was. Wasn't it? Where he scored that like fortuitous goal off the back of his head. But 14 appearances for Frank Pingle and one goal. And if I remember rightly, I think he came back to St James's Park and played for Brøndby. In a friendly, which I was at, 1989 to 1991. Yeah,
that seems to ring a bell.
He came back, didn't he? Probably as part of the transfer deal.
Might have been.
Yeah. 61 games there, 15 goals. So he did manage to find the back of the net. Went on to play for 1860 Munich. Fenerbahce, he was at 3 games, 1 goal. Finished off at Lille in 1995, 5 games. No goals. Okay, one more player in your 11. I've only realised you've only given us one sub when you had 3.
Give one sub. If you want another 2, I can do them off the top of my head for you if you like.
Yeah, do them up. Yeah, okay. So we'll finish your team off. Your deadly duo up front is concluded with
Rob McDonald. Hey, my word.
Who I've interviewed on this channel before during lockdown. Yeah, it was an interesting one.
Comes across as a lovely guy. I'm sure he is a lovely guy. If anybody wants the reason why I'm dubious of people who do well in Holland, he's the reason.
Yeah.
He somehow left English football, went into Dutch football, and he came to us, having scored something like 1 in 2 in Holland. His goal scoring record was crazy. And everybody's thinking, oh, we're bargain here, and he's English, and it's this, that, and the other. I've seen that man miss from 2 yards, put it over. I've seen him miss attempts that were easier to score. He seemed to have an ability to not connect with a diving header at will. His positioning was appalling. His second touch was a tackle consistently. Just all at sea. Couldn't have looked less like a centre forward at times. Never, ever, ever clicked. And just so abjectly bad, I couldn't think of anybody else to put up front in this worst 11.
Yeah. Awful player, lovely guy. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
Yeah, wasn't a great player, and I think by his own admission, things weren't going well for him at the time, and weren't going well for Newcastle United. So he did give a little bit of blame to that. But if you want to listen to the interview with Rob McDonald, search 1980s players is on there. Okay, onto the bench. Give us your one that you did give us. The first sub.
Gabriel Obertan. Now, not necessarily just because of him, and one of the other subs I'll put on falls into this category to an extent as well. He is representative of a number of players that we were happy to be Man United's dumping ground. Sir Alex Ferguson knew when to let a player go, and the amount of time we'd be suckered into hoovering them up. Nicky Butt, Ronnie Johnson, Alan Smith, Gabriel Obertan. And there was a period of time where we basically were Man U's knacker's yard. And that's what he represents to me. A time when people try and dress it up as a bargain, and actually what it was is we'd been sold a pup yet again by the smart moves of Sir Alex Ferguson. He tried very hard, but never looked like settled. Another one like Wayne Faraday, at times blisteringly quick, but didn't have the skill to match his pace, fall over his own feet. He'd go and not take the ball with him. Just really irritatingly bad, but also representative of a time when we were just seemingly there to be Man United's knacker's yard, and that really irks me and irritates me.
Okay, me too on that score. Who's your next substitute?
I'll give you a sub-keeper, and the name's John Corelsa. Wooden, immobile, big lump. Never knew again. Another one like Perez. Why did we sign him? Did we need to sign him? I don't think we did. And used to kick like Frankenstein's monster. He'd come out and sort of lumber out, and it was potluck whether he'd connect with the ball and send it over the bloody stand, or whether he had a 1 in 5 chance of missing the bloody thing and creating havoc. A signing I never understood. He was just bloody awful. Big lump of a keeper who did nothing, promised nothing, and again was probably something of a time when we wasted so much money on below average players.
Yeah, awful keeper. Again, a nice guy. In fact, I've got a pair of his gloves. His match-worn gloves he gave to us one night when he came into a bar that I was working on. But nice guy. Did settle in the area for a while, but didn't do anything great. And again, at that transitional period when Hull came in, had an absolute mare, and unfortunately at the time Newcastle fans were unforgiving after coming through the Keegan years. So yeah, that's your substitute keeper. One more sub, mate, before we find out who your manager is.
Michael Owen.
Oh, he's made it into a few.
For all he represents of what that rat of a man is, what an absolute two-faced, selfish, egotistic.
Oh,
one of the worst people ever to have worn a captain's armband at Newcastle United. Deserves every bit of stick he gets and the rest. And when we needed people to stand up and be counted, he disappeared, hamstrings and all, and started putting a brochure together to flog himself to other clubs. If you really didn't want to come, you shouldn't have come. You were welcomed with open arms. We all had great expectations and hopes. Pairing Owen and Shearer together, it could have been a dream. And why it wasn't a dream? It's because your mindset was never, ever in the right place. And once that dressing room started to get a bit sour, your presence made it even worse. And times your absence, he made it even worse. You could have quite easily used your standing as an individual in the game to try and lift our dressing room, and instead you were absolutely and totally part of everything that was wrong at the club at the time. And I never thought I would have that little run at this time of the evening.
Yeah, but well worth it. Yeah, scored 2 goals against the Mackem. Did score a hat-trick for us. But
was welcomed with open arms and was praised for everything he did.
Unforgiven.
How he repaid will never be forgiven.
So, who is your manager of Newcastle's worst 11?
Well, I had a choice of a few, but again, because of who he is, what he stands for, and what he's done subsequently, Steve Bruce. I've never known anybody who's been given a full remit by the press to deliver a revisionist history of his time in football, but particularly of his time at Newcastle United. We all know what we were watching. We all know what we saw with our own eyes. And he would very happily piss on my back and tell me it was raining, and do it with a straight face. He tried to tell me black was white. He made things up on the hoof. 2 false 8s and an inside-outside left wing front back. What the hell are you talking about, you stupid man? Bruce Ball was appalling. But what was even worse was the fact that the state he left that squad in terms of fitness and mindset, and he'd still tell you he did a great job. And yeah, I mean, some of the stuff we had to put up with, the excuses, the lies, and it went on even after he left. He got help off the media. seems to, like I say, be given a free pass to revise his own history to make him sound far better than he ever was. And let's be honest, the football under him was dire. It sucked the life out of the football club, along with what was going on with Ashley at the time as well. And I can't remember, going through yes, I've seen bad teams play, but everybody agreed there were bad teams. And yes, I've seen bad single results from better teams. That happens in football. But I've not seen anything so sustainably, abjectly bad, and boring, and difficult to watch, and difficult to justify watching. It tested Newcastle United fans' patience to the limit. And it's easy to see why, even now, 3 years into new ownership, people are prepared to turn around and say, do you remember that? Yes, it'll stick long in my memory. That's not to say it's an excuse that should be used, but at the same time, God, it was awful. I remember standing over here, me, Stu, and a few other the Geordies in Dubai. Handful of were watching just awful football games. Even when we used to all watching Goodfellas with the Leeds and the Liverpool fans, and them watching our television saying, what are you lads watching this for? Why are you even here? And that was fans of other clubs could see how bad we were. But also, like I said before, the free rein he's had to excuse himself, to give himself a totally revised history of his time at the club. Irks with his little friends in the media, because we've never really had the truth about how bad things were under him from press outside of the region, certainly.
And that's it, Mitch. You've managed to achieve it. We managed to get Lionel Perez in goal. We had a back three of Paul Sweeney, Sol Campbell, and John Cornwell. We had a period of discontent in the 80s, and boy, did it show in your midfield. Gary Megson was in there. Glyn Hodges, Wayne Faraday, Frank Conan, and a little bit more of a modern take with the Brazilian who couldn't kick a football, Fumaga. And up front, a deadly duo of Frank Pingle and Rob MacDonald. And on the bench, Gabriel Obertan, John Carelsier, and Michael Owen. And managing Mitch's 11, Steve Bruce. Mitch, a lot of fun that. Thanks for doing it, mate. And look forward to seeing you again soon, mate. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find their website at skipsandbins.com. Contact us, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners in 2024. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts. You can find them at www.media-arts.co.uk. And don't forget, we are a podcast. You can find us on iTunes or Spotify or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel grow, then hit the like button, the little thumb underneath the video, click share and share to your social media, or join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to take out a one-off payment membership, go to nufcmatters.com and hit membership. And for a £25 fee, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. You can also put a smartphone over the top of this QR code. It'll take you straight there. And don't forget, we also help the food bank on this channel. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is a website where you can make a virtual donation today.